closer, mostly so that you can't escape. So excuse me here while I type my code in. Everybody look away. So here we go. So there, as John was kind enough to point out, I graduated in '82. I wanted that to just go because I was like, I look really good for my age. But whatever, I am not 53, I'm 43. There's a little bit of sibilance, like high end in this mic. I don't know if the dogs are cringing outside, but there's probably a little 880 that could be dialed out if the sound guy could work on that. That'd be awesome. Yeah. So I want to talk tonight, and I'm really, really excited because I've got some really interesting insights that I'm hoping you will be excited about too, about the role of curiosity in the future of education. And when Becky Love asked me to speak tonight, she outfitted me with a stack of packages that outlined some of Tabor's latest initiatives, and then I stumbled upon the intelligent and forward-thinking John Perk's amazing vision for exceptional readiness. And I don't know if any of you have had the time to sort of check this out, but it's an incredible vision. And so at the risk of boring you all by standing and starting out the evening by reading to you, because I'm going to take a note from John's cue book about coding, I beg you to stick with me because what I want to explore tonight depends deeply on your curiosity and open-mindedness. And there will be a pop quiz at the end. Just kidding, and you actually will see how much I'm just kidding by the end of this talk. So this is the quote. Our society cannot thrive on business as usual. Our world needs a rising generation of young people who will look over the known horizon and navigate their way toward unexpected ideas and solutions. I love that, first of all. We need citizen students who demonstrate leadership with conscience, who are capable of critical thought, unswayed by history or current fashion. More than ever, we need to fill the world with individuals who possess initiative, optimism, and a desire for personal action as never before. At Tabor, we envision this as exceptional readiness for every Tabor student. I hope that thrills everybody as much as it thrills me. Just a round of applause here for Now, with that quote in mind, and especially the part about looking over the horizon, I'd like to take you on a little journey through my own education, which really started at Tabor. This is me, my freshman year. You know, like the baseball hat pearls look. It's really good. Yeah, so that's me bright-eyed and terrified and entering into my freshman year and dyslexic. And here, you know, I was coming, as most kids do, to boarding school from a really comfortable and loving home and into a completely unfamiliar environment. In fact, I actually looked up unfamiliar today, and it actually stems from family, familiar. So I was, you know, leaving home, and this is how it felt. Did you ever notice that Wile E. Coyote never fell until he actually looked down? I love that. So I thought I was on stable ground, and then I looked down, and noticing I was in midair, I was frantic. And like most of my peers, I scrambled to save myself by knitting together a parachute with any and all available materials. Mostly my peers' approval and my teacher's approval and good grades, and you know, A's seemed to keep me afloat best, but B's would do, and you know, C's would be sort of a hole in the parachute that was sort of, and then I would, you know, patch it together with A's again, and you know, float. And stay away from the dreaded bottom. And I was dyslexic, so this was really hard work, and my life felt at stake. And actually, I ran into one of my dorm heads, actually, this morning, who teaches at my son's school now, Kimberly Keene, who some of you will know and remember. And she was saying that she remembered sitting on the edge of my bed while I cried over writing these papers and thought I was stupid. And so all through my freshman and sophomore year, I was really diligently trying to put together this parachute, if you will, keeping me afloat, full of grades and goodness and pats on the head and validation. And then enter my junior year. Some of you will remember Mr. Nurse, best name ever. He was my AP English teacher, and he was giving us all these books that were so incredibly inspiring. And I was reading this content, and I was lit on fire like never before. Like in any of my other classes, I just felt so many interesting questions were sort of coming out of these books and these lectures that he was giving. And I would write these papers, and I'd be, just up at night by the candlelight. Now I'm just being romantic. But I was, up like writing. Oh, actually, I didn't even have a keyboard, so I was like scribbling furiously with like bleeding fingers. And I get into my, I hand him in, bated breath, waiting for him to come back and say, "This is the most brilliant thing I've ever read, and we need to get this published immediately." And instead, what I was getting back were papers with 60, 65, tons of red ink covering these papers, right? It looked like somebody had died. There was so much red. And I felt so disheartened, and halfway through the semester, my freshman, my junior year, halfway through, I just felt like giving up. I got this paper back, same old stuff, terrible, grade, and I remember thinking, okay, I have a choice right now. I can give up, turn the light off on my education, and just die inside. Or I can advocate for curiosity. And I went up to Mr. Nurse after class and I said, "Listen, I love this class. I love everything that I'm learning and all of the questions that I'm beginning to consider. And I am so disheartened by this grade, by these grades that I get time after time. Would you consider keeping your grades in your own book and not putting them on my paper?" And because it was Tabor, he said, "Okay." And the rest of the semester, he kept his grades to himself. And I was set free. I got to explore all the questions that I wanted to ask, instead of having to answer his and cater to what he thought was the interesting bits that I should be getting. And that changed my life. And I have no idea what grade I finally got in that. But Mr. Nurse wrote me an incredible college recommendation about my bravery and my adventurous spirit and my creativity, and it's definitely why I got into Brown. And I followed my curiosity there into anthropology, where I stumbled upon a fable that would change my life forever. It was this fable about 8 blind men and an elephant. Is anybody familiar with this fable? Okay, fantastic. So it's this ancient fable where these blind men are walking down this path in the jungle, and they come across something huge, an elephant in their path. And each of them gets to feel a different part of this elephant's body before concluding what they think elephant is. The one that feels the tail thinks elephant is a rope. And the one that feels the tusk thinks elephant's a spear. And the one that feels the ear thinks elephant's a towel. And the one that feels the leg thinks it's a pillar. And each of them, feeling a different part, thinks that they know what is blocking their path. So they start fighting. They start arguing with one another, righteously saying, no, it's a towel, no, it's a rope, you're a fool. And this wise king comes along and he says, okay, everybody stop fighting now. All of you are feeling a different part of something much bigger that alone you can't understand. So you need to find a way to listen to each other with open minds and express your vision and your version with clarity and without fear. And when I heard this fable, I thought, oh my God, we're all blind men. We are all blind men. We are each feeling a tiny little sliver of space and time on our journey across this planet, and then thinking that we know much more of the whole, and befriending those who agree with us and discrediting those who see it differently. And so much more could be understood if we just had a different language through which to communicate without threatening and without fear of judgment. And so I started thinking about that we come to this planet with these 5 senses. And these are the only tools that we really have to explore the vastness of this reality. And using a universal palette of tiny elements, we have this is science 101. We all learn this at table. Photons, chemicals, pressure, and sound waves. Those are the only things our senses have access to in the universe. And those are like our paint. And then our nervous systems are like brushes, and they pick up these stimulus, and they transport them to the brain, which acts as a painter, which paints everything that we see, taste, touch, hear, and smell against the canvas of our minds. So we are all artists. We are each creating our reality. Each one of you here tonight is experiencing a different reality, a different talk. I'm just giving one. But there are many getting created right now. So with this fable and the realization that we're all blind men and that we each paint our own realities, I created Consenses. And what I did first was I created my own elephant. I collected 22 images that represented different angles of one thing. And then I designated 22 different musicians, and I gave each one of them one of these photographs, and I said, what is this? There's no right or wrong answer. I want to understand this through your music. And they came back with incredible songs that represented the essence of the photographs. And then I took those and I gave them to dancers. And I said, dancers, express this music as movement. And I took those dances and I gave them to painters. And I gave the paintings to perfumers. I said, I want to understand this painting as a fragrance. There's no right or wrong answer. And then the perfumes went to poets, and the poems went to sculptors, and sculptors went to on and on and on until all of the senses had been represented. And at the end, 150 artists from around the world had participated in this project. None of them got to see further back into the interpretive process beyond the one piece that I gave them, and none got to know who else was participating in this project. So nobody knew whose work they were working on or who else was participating. And then I collected each one of these pieces, this interpretive chain, if you will, and I gave that to a set designer. And I said, okay, interpret this chain as a whole and create a physical space for which it can live in. And then I took all of those sets and I put them into a big open space and I opened it up to the public and I said, come on in, you tell me now what you see. And it became a conversation. These visitors would come in and they would interpret the work for themselves and then they would express their version. So it was an ongoing interpretation. And one of our incredible Tabor alum that also happens to be my cousin, he interpreted this photograph. And he came up with a song that represented his perspective of it. And then a dancer interpreted that, and then a poet, and so on and so forth. And here is a tiny taste of some of that work.
How long have we waited for your love? How long? How long is the day when your love is gone? How long? When you hear trouble when your long night begins, listen to the beating of your heart. Maybe fleeting at the start.
So that's just a segment, a tiny fraction of that chain, but you get the idea, you get the understanding of how this project works. So schools started coming to me and saying, we see how this project can be incorporated into our curriculum and how it can actually reinforce what we're trying to create. And so these are some of the schools that I started working with to bring pieces of Consensus into. And what I was trying to create was a way for students to be able to see things from each other's perspective, to recognize that they are, like these blind men, that they are experiencing one unique piece of reality, but how it's very limited, and they need to expose themselves to a broader, more vast experience. And so Consensus has now developed a unique arts curriculum for a classroom setting in which students collaborate to create their own interpretive chains. And in the process, they learn tolerance and empathy through listening to others, not through their words, but through various art forms. By enabling communication through a medium other than language, Consensus is uniquely effective and powerful at spreading the message that everyone's perspective is equal and valid. And so I'm hoping that Teresa will bring this curriculum to Tabor, which would be really exciting. Don't you think? Don't you think? She's already done some of the work, and it's outside, and she's already sort of playing with the concept of these interpretive chains. So here we are again with Wile E. Coyote. And there's this great Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche quote that says, "The bad news is you're falling through the air. Nothing to hang on to, no parachute. But the good news is there's no ground." Tomorrow's citizen students need to be prepared to walk into midair, into a world more fractured and fragmented and divided than ever before, and they need to not be daunted when they look and see they've walked off the cliff. They need to not immediately go to creating a parachute full of shoulds and shouldn'ts and goods and bads and rights and wrongs and A's and F's, but rather to look with curiosity below their feet to see that there is no ground. And if there is no ground, then they're flying. And they can teach others to do the same. Tabor's exceptional readiness that John Quirk so eloquently talks about is not about preparing students to build parachutes when confronted by the unknown, but rather to look with curiosity beyond themselves and to see and recognize that their arms are wings. Thank you.
I've had many times I've been honored in the presence of a Tabor alumnus or alumna. I've never been more honored to be quoted. That's pretty good. That's really, really good. Another round of applause. The best of events is always when you have a good time together and you kind of reacquaint and you catch up with people you haven't seen in a long time. Maybe you meet some new people. Even better than that is having all of it and a few things to think about on the way home. So I really loved your presentation. I'm inspired by it and really inspired by your work and hope to have some very big part of it at Tabor Academy before too long. So thanks again, Sally. I'm trying to judge right now. I'm trying to judge if I can hold you here for about 4 minutes. What do you think? And I'm looking for a little, because once you give me permission, I know I can hold you. There you go. Okay, it's because